Welcome to Jazz in the Land, the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra podcast, featuring your host, Darrell Scott.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Jazz in the Land, the original CJO Jazz podcast. My name is Darrell Scott. My guest today is a gentleman who's a bassist for the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra. He's played with the likes of Joe Lovano, Regina Carter, Maria Snyder, just to name a few. And this morning, we have something new to talk about. He's got a new project out called Where We Started. This is Aidan Plank. Aidan, how are you today?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for having me.
Not a problem, man. This is great. I'm always interested in the process of creating new music. How did you come up? I think the title says a lot. Can you tell me how you came up with this title?
I can. The piece I actually premiered the title track Where We Started was premiered on a CJO concert.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was maybe even just last year. It was the concert that we did with Richard Bona.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of my favorite concerts I've ever done with a CJO because one, I got to contribute a piece to it. And then the other thing was that because Richard was playing, I could actually sit back and listen to the band. I played one or two pieces and then I just went on the audience and listened, and it was great to hear the band and especially great to hear him. But I knew that I was going to be contributing a piece to that concert. And I've actually, I've loved Richard Bona's music for a very long time. And in particular, I like his collaborations with Joe Zawinul from the Zawinul Syndicate. And also, for people that don't know, he was one of the co-leaders of Weather Report. So my attempt was to write something that sounded somewhat Weather Report-esque or had some of that energy. But the reason it's called Where We Started is when I write music, I don't usually know what the piece means to me ahead of time.
Right.
I start writing and the piece unfolds and it kind of takes on a character of itself. It's also kind of like, I have like two sons, and it's interesting. Like they're here in the world and they are growing and evolving and they have their own personalities.
Right.
So I find music that I compose oftentimes takes that on as well. So this piece, as I was writing it, it started feeling quite happy and joyful. And it reminded me of a particular feeling, which it's hard for me to describe this because the easiest context is really kind of in a romantic relationship. But I actually think it applies much more broadly, where really when you meet people, and it could be any category, it could be someone you're like head over heels in love with. It could also just be like a really good friend.
Mm-hmm.
But you just meet someone and you're kind of excited because you know that person.
Right.
And, like you wake up in the morning and you think, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to go see my buddy today, or I'm going to go see this person I'm totally have a huge crush on. And so the music, to me, that piece is really trying to express that initial excitement about really anyone. And so that's why I called it Where We Started.
Okay. There are 7 of your original compositions on this project, correct?
I think there's 6 originals and 1 arrangement, I think.
Okay. Why did you choose, or what's the impetus behind the creating those 7 tunes? I mean, how do you choose those? Because I am sure if we could go in your office and open up that file drawer on the bottom right-hand side, we'd find 400 more songs. How did you manage to choose these?
So you're onto something there. I mean, I wouldn't say it's very organized. There's like piles of paper,
Right.
And that's just part of the process for anyone that writes music. Is you write more stuff that doesn't work than that does work.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't just sit down and say, well, I'm going to write a piece today, and it just comes out completely finished. Maybe some people can do that. I can't do that. But the pieces on the recording, they represent for me what I think are the more successful attempts at writing that I've had. in the past maybe decade.
Really?
Yeah, so they're the pieces that I really liked. People are so kind when you work on writing music, and you get a lot of positive feedback. You also get some constructive
Hmm.
criticism, which
Right.
which is part of the process. But I can't always trust when someone else says, "Oh, that's a great piece," because sometimes
Right.
I don't know. But these for me are the ones that I think are good, and I wanted to share with the world.
It's like throwing yourself out there amongst the audience and hoping that you always get good reviews. Are you that way? You put these out there and they're now released to the public, and you're hoping, just to steal the Sally Field line,
Uh-huh.
you hope that they love you. Is that part of it?
I, I mean, I think every artist to an extent feels that way. Every musician, every artist. I think, um, I what I want from this recording, like the best thing I think could possibly happen is, if people listen to it and they enjoy it, and more than enjoy it, what I want them to be able to do is find their own stories within the music. So
Hmm.
I haven't finished putting out the physical copies of the album yet. That should happen, I think, sometime this summer. But in those liner notes, what I write is actually, I don't talk a lot about, like, this piece is about this and this is about this. To me, it's
Hmm.
what I love about music is, you know when you find a piece of music you really love, it kind of takes on a personal narrative
Personality or
for
something.
you.
Yes.
You decide, oh, this song is about this, and I see these images, and here's what the landscape looks like, or it's this person in my life. So more than wanting people to, adore or love me or anything, which of course everybody likes that, but I can't I can't
Hmm.
on that. I would be happy if there were a handful of people that this kind of enhanced their life in that way.
I in reading some biographical information on you, it says you graduated with a degree in biology.
I did.
So my question is always, I'm always interested in the path. So you go to college and you get a degree in biology, yet you're playing bass.
Right.
How did you make the transition from biology to music and then choose music to be the dominant part of your career?
Well, history with music predates my history with professional music.
Hmm.
Predates even going to college. I started playing gigs in Cleveland when I was like 14. There's this guitarist that used to live up in Cleveland named Dan Dockrell, and he lives down in I think he lives in Denton, Texas, or I think they say Danton. Uh,
Yeah.
but uh, he would come and pick me up at my parents' house, throw my bass in his car, and he'd drive me out to play these gigs. So even before I went to college, I was working as a professional musician, and I didn't even go to college until I was much older. I didn't start my bachelor's degree until I was in my mid 20s. Um, so when I went to school, I wanted to do something practical because uh, life as a freelance musician always presents its challenges, and I thought, well, maybe I'll find some stable career, in biology. And I graduated with a biology degree from Cleveland State. I had a good time there, and I really do like biology. I worked for about a year for the Department of Natural Resources. I was a natural resources specialist at Old Woman Creek Reserve over, where is that? It's around Huron. Uh,
Hmm.
and what ended up happening is, my wife got a job. We were living in Oberlin, Ohio, and she got a job out in Hudson, Ohio, which was about 90 minutes from where I was working as a natural resources specialist. So I just decided, I'll just find a job out where my wife lives, and it ended
Right.
up being that I just found enough work again, just playing gigs and
Hmm.
playing music and teaching music, and it made me a bit more money than I was making as a biologist. So I thought, okay, I'll just do this. So it's somewhat simple, but the thing that's it's even simpler but more meaningful to me is as much as I've always tried to do what people uh, would like me to do in some ways,
Right. Yes.
uh, I wasn't all that happy doing what everyone else was telling me was a good thing to do. When you're a musician your whole life, you have people literally just come up to you and say like, oh, you can't be a musician, that's too hard.
Yes.
And I bought into a lot of that when I was younger. But the truth is I'm much happier being a musician. So now I'm just trying to be happy.
You mentioned at the very beginning that you had the opportunity, you were playing with the CJO and you had the opportunity to go sit in the audience
Yeah.
and watch them.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that that happens often,
Right.
but the thing is, you get a totally different perspective of what goes on because you're not kind of maintaining the train on the rails.
Right.
You get to watch the train run.
Yeah.
What was that feeling like?
It was great. It's a similar gripe I have as a composer. I don't actually like when I write a piece and I have to play the piece,
Hmm.
because I feel like I can't hear everything that I've written.
Right.
Because when you're performing in a jazz orchestra, a big band, it's hard to hear globally. It's hard to hear everything that's happening because you're really focused on, I got to play my part right. And for
Right.
me in the rhythm section, like I am very, very, very focused on what Jim Rupp is doing on the drums.
Hmm.
Um, and it's always easier to hear him too. But so I'm not usually aware of everything that the whole band is doing, or really any band is doing when I'm playing. But yeah, when I went out and sat in the audience and got to listen, I could hear everything. And
Hmm.
that's a really pleasant experience, and just such a different experience. And it's a good reminder for me too, because when you work as a professional musician, sometimes you forget that you still like to go see music.
Right.
And when you're going to a concert, you know sometimes I have to force myself to listen in a different way. Like as a performer, I'm analyzing my own performance, I'm trying to take in what's right and wrong about it. But when I just go to a concert, I try to just listen in a more kind of like heartfelt way, or
Right.
listen in a way that's not analyzing the music but just kind of enjoying the music and like going on that ride.
If I would have seen that, I would have sat next to you and tried not to ask you 19 million questions.
Right.
I think that would be my thing. Hey, shouldn't you be up? No, okay. But
Yeah.
what? Um,
I went to see Herbie Hancock about, shoot, maybe like 12 years ago at Oberlin, and it was a great concert. But I had the same thought, because Billy Hart, the drummer, he walked in,
mhm.
he sat in the row in front of me. I thought, oh man, I wonder what he's thinking while he's listening to this.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Back to this latest project. How long did it take you to put all this new project together?
Well, like I said, it's the project is just kind of these kind of highlights that of music that I've written that I like from the past decade. Really, it really stretches that far back. Though most of the works are, I'd say, were written in the past four years or so. But a few things go back even further. Can you remind me what your question was again?
That's what I love about this show. Um, you this new project. How long did it
Oh,
take
how
you to
long
put
did
all
it
this?
take?
Right.
Yeah. So it didn't take that long.
No?
If you think about it in terms of the actual recording, that was it was a day and a half of work in the studio for the musicians, and then I'd say about another half day of work doing everything else. So once you have the pieces written, if you have good musicians, it's not that bad. But the actual, writing down the notes and everything, that takes longer. It takes me a while to write a good piece.
Mm-hmm.
Like to write a good piece can take me quite a number of months, if not years. To write a mediocre piece doesn't take that long. To write something bad takes me no time at all. But yeah, the writing takes a lot longer than the actual, recording.
So you have an army of
Uh-huh.
musicians that you know.
Yeah.
When it comes to doing your thing for your project, who you calling, or how do you choose those people? And I know offense probably not the right word, but how do you leave somebody out that you know, but you're looking for you and you want the best work?
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the most challenging questions I could possibly think of, because there's no way for a recording not to feel somewhat exclusive,
Right.
and I'd like to publicly go on the record in saying, like, there's no way any recording I would ever do could possibly feature all the musicians I admire and love
Right.
and that are all my dear friends, because I just have to be, like a 10-hour thing, it's way too expensive. So what I tend to do is I do have a very tight core of colleagues that I've ended up working a lot with. So, if you pay close attention to the record, the band I play in Pulse, they're all on the record. Dustin May's the drummer in that band, and Anthony Fuoco's the pianist, and Brad Wagner plays saxophone. So they're all there, and that should be of no surprise. Then everyone else is, first call folks for me, people that I really trust to get the job done very well. And a lot of those people are, really, really well known names here in the jazz community. Some of them aren't as well known. Some of them are younger players that are coming up a little bit more, like the saxophonist Max Schlenk plays on the record, and he's a young up and coming guy. But the other thing about it, and this is just a reality, some of it is also dictated by who's available.
Right. Oh yeah, I get
So
that.
when if you're doing a trio date, it's easy to kind of herd three people. When
Right.
you're doing a full big band and it's a bit expanded with a couple other things, trying to coordinate schedules of 20 some people is really, really hard.
Mhm.
So sometimes you think, oh, I really want to use this person, but there's just no way they're available, and you don't even have the funding to pay them anything that they're worth. So some of
Right.
it too is who's available. But we're lucky in this area in that, in most instances, most instrument categories, there's a handful of very, very good players. So
Okay, Aiden, as we wrap this up, the new project is Where We Started. Give us your synopsis of what this is all about. If you had to go out, if I'm going to make you a salesman now,
okay.
and I want you to tell the listeners why they should buy it, what's on here, what you like about it, and
All right.
okay,
You got it. So before I even do that, I also want to really thank Stephen Philip Harvey at Hidden Cinema Records for putting this out. He's a great composer, and he's been putting out things of other composers, which is really great. But so the record is about I would say it's about this concept I really love, which is that music is music. That's what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
When you listen to it, if you want to check out this recording and you're saying, okay, I like that straight ahead stuff, there's a piece on there that is that. If you're like, I want this kind of more, avant-garde sounding, there's that too. There's a very classical sounding piece. There's kind of a sound collage piece. There's a piece with lyrics and a great singer, Chelsea Salvaggio. It's eclectic. And for me, that's what I always loved about jazz, because I thought within jazz, all that stuff fits.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas other genres, so to speak, of music, it's not as easy to convince someone that, like a John Zorn and Ornette Coleman recording and Louis Armstrong recording and a Weather Report recording and a Duke Ellington recording all kind of are the same genre of music. So I love jazz mostly because I feel like all this stuff fits. So if you're interested in that kind of experience, I think you'll really enjoy the record. You don't actually have to buy it because that's the world we live in now.
Right.
So the reason you should listen to it, because it's not going to cost you anything to listen to it.
Right.
So just put it on. It's a really nice length. I think it's like kind of an old jazz record length. It's about 36 minutes long. So, you don't have to waste a whole hour. You could lie down on the couch for a half hour and take in the whole thing, and that would be nice for you. But the reason you should buy it is it'll help me put out more records in the future. So if you like it, that's the only thing I'm ever asking. If you really like it, go ahead and go to the Bandcamp page and just throw a little money at it, and then it keeps the ball rolling.
The one thing I truly enjoy about doing these interviews is the honesty that I get from the artist. It is absolutely incredible. It's like, here, Darrell, bottom line, this is what it is, and this is what we want.
I'm just hoping, Darrell, like when my time on this planet is over,
mm-hmm.
maybe someone will find some of these pieces and go, wow, I really like this. Who was that guy?
Oh, don't worry. You ain't gonna worry about that. I think
that's it.
There'll be many a thing. So honestly, how do people get to this music? You mentioned Bandcamp. Is there any other way in these streaming processes or anything?
I believe it's on every streaming platform right now. Like
okay.
Spotify person or a YouTube person or an Apple Music person. I believe it's there.
Okay.
But Bandcamp is a great page, mostly because it's the one page that usually gives the most support to the artist when you actually buy the recording. Okay. So you can go to my Bandcamp page. You could also go to the label website, Hidden Cinema Records. And then if you are really waiting out for the physical copy, it'll be here. I'm going to sell those on Bandcamp as well. So really, I'm trying to direct people to Bandcamp because that's, I think, the place where people actually care about the artists seem to be going these days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Aidan Plank, this has been wonderful. You're just a great guy. You're a great bass player. Your music is wonderful. I love. I'm going to say this. It's just my opinion from the couple of times that we've talked. Your sense of humor is on point. It is. It is on point. Ladies and gentlemen, you have watched the CJO Podcast, Jazz in the Land, with Aidan Plank. New record out, and that's my problem. I don't know what to call it. Record, CD. That's why I call them projects. It's just easier, and you can lump it all under one thing.
This is the 21st century. We can call it that.
Okay. So if you can get to Bandcamp, we'll direct everybody to Bandcamp. Take a listen to it and let us know what you think. And when the CD comes out, I did it again. When the CD comes out, we'll let you know about that too. Aidan, thanks again. You've been listening to the CJO Podcast, Jazz in the Land. There's more after this.
Sponsorships not only make our season possible, but provide the much-needed funding for the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra to provide outreach in the community and perpetuate the love of jazz for generations to come. We're so grateful to our 2025 season series sponsor, Ohio Basement Authority, for helping our 40th anniversary season come to life. Contact booking at clevelandjazz.org for more information on sponsorship opportunities.
Welcome to Jazz in the Land, the original CJO podcast. I am the host, Darrell Scott. Today we are going to talk about a man who holds many hats when it comes to the CJO board. His name is George Carr. George, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm very well. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Not a problem, sir. Let's first of all talk about how I always want to talk about journeys. How did you start and get affiliated with the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra?
Well, I originally aspired to be a member of the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra. I got my college degree in jazz performance, and when I first moved to Cleveland, I had basically given up on the plan of a full-time career as a performer. My chosen instrument was the trombone, but I had maintained a pretty active, even though I decided to take another path in terms of my career, I kept a pretty active performing schedule. And as soon as I moved to Cleveland, I was active with the Ernie Krivda Band and with some other local bands and starting to get a lot of calls and playing a lot of interesting gigs. And so when I first encountered the CJO, it was through its players and the musicians in the CJO, who I deeply respected. Some of the great trombone players in Cleveland history have gone through the band. And so I, as a performer, started getting the occasional call to sub with the CJO. And of course, I answered those calls and picked them right up. I love the band and respect its musicianship and quality and mission and everything. After a while, it became apparent that I wasn't headed toward any kind of permanent seat in the CJO, and that's just fine with me. But there is a need always for nonprofit administrators. And I had, shortly after law school, which I completed here in Cleveland, I had started working with a number of nonprofits in the arts space, including the Cleveland Public Theater and some other groups. And so I was recruited to the board of the CJO in about 2004, I think. I was elected in the summer of 2004. So by that time, I was a early 30-something, 32 years old. And I sat on the board for a couple of terms. They're always 3-year terms. So I sat on the board from 2004 to 2010, and then I cycled off. And then I was more recently approached by Paul Ferguson, who I've known for decades now since I moved to Cleveland. And he solicited me to try to rejoin the board because the composition of the board had changed so much in the intervening 10 or 15 years. A lot had happened, a lot of water under the bridge. So I rejoined the board in 2023, and I'm now coming up to the end of my third 3-year term, but they're separated by about 13 years in between. So I've been around the CJO for the whole time I've been in Cleveland, pushing 30 years now. But I've only very occasionally played with the band, and I've spent much more time thinking about its administration and its financial success than about its musicianly attributes.
Okay, a musician question. Why did you pick the trombone?
I thought it was for smart kids. I was fooled in my, they always do like an instrument petting zoo or whatever when you're in public school music class. So imagine it's 5th grade, there's the instrumental music teacher comes, presents to the whole group. The whole 5th grade is sitting there in the auditorium or whatever big assembly room. And he starts by demonstrating the woodwinds. And the woodwinds, I get it. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of hardware on the clarinet. There's a lot of places to put your fingers. But you do all that work, and the sound that comes out is, a clarinet. And that didn't really excite me as a 10-year-old boy. When he got around to the brass family, the trumpet was a lot more interesting and more brassy, powerful sound, more suitable for, something more intense, what I was looking for. But the trumpet just looked too easy. It has 3 buttons on it. Man, compared to the clarinet, it looks like something for children. And of course, I had no idea at age 10 that there's, 62 different permutations of how to combine those 3 valves and make the trumpet sound all kinds of different notes. So when he demonstrated the trombone, I thought, well, that's interesting. It's got an even louder and bigger sound and more singing related sound than the trumpet. But the real clincher was when some kid in the audience raised his hand and said, "How do you know where to put the slide?" And the music teacher said, rather than give a 10-minute trombone lesson, he just said, "Well, you just have to remember." And I thought, well, that's what the smart kids play. I'll remember where to put the slide and I get that great sound out of it. And I don't have to carry around anything heavier like the tuba or whatever. So the trombone was the right fit for me. And I studied it from 5th grade music class all the way through high school. I joined the musicians union in high school, started playing gigs and dances and jazz jobs as a high school student. I went to college, got a music degree in both jazz performance and classical performance, both on the trombone. And then I decided that music was not going to be a good career path. And so I went to law school, and I came up to Cleveland to go to law school. And now I've been in Cleveland for 30 plus years.
So if push comes to shove and somebody asked you to fill in, could you?
Well, I wouldn't be as good as the guys who sit on the band now, but I could probably cover most of the part. Let's say
Okay.
80-90%, something like that.
Just checking, just
But
making sure.
but no, I don't aspire to pretend to be as skilled or virtuosic as the guys in the current CJO trombone section. They're all fine musicians.
Thank you. So you move into this board position as a board member, just a general overall board member. What is the process, and what is it about that attracts you to stay in that position?
Well, the process for joining the board is pretty straightforward. There's always a nominating committee or nominating vice president, somebody who has control over who gets solicited and who, we collect resumes from a lot of different people. We get solicitations about joining the board. We have relationships with various referral services like Business Volunteers Unlimited or other kinds of nonprofits who say, oh, if there's somebody interested in doing board service, but they're not particularly picky about what entity they do, then they might be referred to the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra. So there's always a filtering or nomination process where somebody on the board says, is this new person going to be a good fit for both what we need on the board in terms of skills and experience, but also are they going to fit well with the other current board members and get along and be effective? And so that process, when I joined at the age of 32, was pretty straightforward. There were only 14 or 15 board members, and they were all had resumes that looked kind of like mine, or, for people older in their careers, obviously more experience, but a lot of, bankers and lawyers and other professionals, real estate brokers, that sort of thing. So it was a group of professional people who cared deeply about the mission of the CJO and wanted it to succeed and wanted to help manage and direct its functions. And so that's the process I went through. I was able to persuade them, obviously, because of my musical background. I had no trouble persuading anybody that I cared deeply about jazz music and the jazz tradition and Cleveland's place in that jazz tradition. So I don't think there's any surprises there, but it made sense to demonstrate that I also had nonprofit management experience and that I was interested and capable to handle committee work and press relations and other facets that come with being a board member for even a small nonprofit like the CJO.
So this is a jazz organization. Jazz is not always the most popular music. So what is your love of jazz like? How did it start?
Well, I had probably like many jazz musicians, I had some influential music teachers in my history. My high school band director, a wonderful trumpet player named Paul Parks, was a huge jazz fan himself. He was a lead trumpet, high note trumpet player in terms of his skill set and attitude. He himself had played in a number of good jazz bands. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, so this would have been in Columbus, Ohio, the home of Sweets Edison, among other famous players. And of course, wonderful Wes Orr, who was the lead trumpet player down in the Columbus Jazz Orchestra for decades, was also a public school music teacher in the Columbus Public Schools. So my high school band director, Paul Parks, had a wonderful program and connected me with other musicians and instilled, I think, an appreciation for jazz. He had a stack of records in the band office that we would listen to on breaks as, when the marching band wasn't doing anything that day or when there was some study hall or whatever. And my family were big jazz fans. My mom had Miles Davis on the shelves, and my dad understood, although he wasn't as big a fan as my mom, but he understood what was going on and was very appreciative. And as I got older and more experienced just in high school and college, and like I say, started playing with dance bands and other kinds of jazz units, my parents subscribed to the Columbus Jazz Orchestra, and I would go to see concerts there, and I loved the music. And so I've just been a jazz fan for as long as I can recall. And I think it has to do with just a combination of both good role models, my parents and my band directors, but also the innate sort of beauty and Americanness of jazz as a music. Like I've now, obviously I'm a classically trained musician. I've studied, classical masterpieces and hundreds of years of the Western music tradition. And there's something really interesting and unique about American jazz and its history and its practice and how it affects the world. And that's really compelling to me. I love that story, and I love being a part of that story, even though I'm just a minuscule cog in the machine of jazz music.
Let's talk about your love of the music. You're a board member for the CJO, so you have seen countless numbers of concerts. What are
Oh,
some of
sure.
your memories of those shows, of being on the board and being a fan of the organizations and the musicians that the CJO brings to Cleveland?
Well, the CJO has always been a ripe source of guest artists. So some of my favorite shows with the CJO are the ones where they brought in guest artists that particularly tickled my fancy or my interest. In the trombone field, for instance, the CJO has featured artists like John Fedchock. I've seen him perform at the CJO several times. I've obviously seen Paul Ferguson, who's a really fantastic player. I know he gets a lot of kudos for his arrangements, and he should. He's wonderful. But Paul is a remarkably intense trombone player, and he's performed with the band many times. I've also really enjoyed some of the more avant-garde shows. I really liked the show where we brought in, what's his name? Now I'm blanking on it. The abstract drummer who then won a Grammy the following year. I think his name was, oh, I'm sorry. I'll have to.
Okay.
I'm blanking on that one. Of course, some of the shows I've seen with the CJO were just historic. Like I saw Introducing Sean Jones, which was his debut as the music director, artistic director for the CJO back when I was on the board the first time around. In fact, our board was the one who went through that search process and located the next artistic director after Jack Sean stepped down. So I've seen some fantastic shows with Sean and with other guest artists. I've also really enjoyed some of the old masters coming back, like seeing guys like Bill Dobbins come back and, like white-haired masters of the form. Saw Plaz Johnson play with the Columbus Jazz Orchestra once. So some of these old masters are really fascinating to watch in live performance.
What do you think the legacy, you've been a part of this organization for quite a number of years, what do you think the legacy should be and is for the CJO?
Well, I think the CJO is basically at the center of its own legacy. I think there are a lot of wonderful players and writers and musicians who've come through the CJO, and it's been an important part of their careers. It's now to the point where some of the folks who served decades on the CJO have made it impossible to recite their CVs of musical accomplishment without talking about their service with the CJO and their amazing musicianship. So I think a lot of the performing legacy of the CJO is yet to be written. And as much as I'm proud of some of the concerts I've heard, and many, the CJO has a lot to be proud of musically, I think the legacy in the sense of a performing organization is always stronger focusing on the future than on the past. It does us no good to say we did a great concert in 1999 or in 1983 or in 2026. The real legacy is written when we perform a concert for the next generation of fans and students and practitioners and people who love jazz in the future. I think the CJO does have a respectable legacy as part of the preservation of the tradition, right? There are a lot of wonderful musicians who've gone through or been featured with the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra who have not just learned its exacting musical standards and the professionalism and excellence that the CJO performs and aspires to, but also a lot of teaching, a lot of stories, a lot of the tradition of both performance practice, how do the Cleveland guys play this chart or how do the Cleveland guys play this sound? And also in terms of preserving the community, we have recorded interviews, not least through this podcast, with major musicians and featured artists across a variety of time spans and different eras. And sometimes their interaction with the CJO is part of preserving that legacy, that we've told the story and we appreciate and understand the traditions of jazz and how they get passed down from one generation and one performer to the next.
The one thing that I've noticed in our conversations is that You are a very passionate man. You're very passionate about this organization. I know that you have a full-time job away from the CJO. I am a byproduct, I'll say, of the question, what is your work-life balance? I don't
Right.
I don't know what that is. I just do what I do.
Sure.
But let's talk about, in your case, full-time job, this passion you have about the CJO. How do you balance it? Like, are you free on weekends?
Well, I try to use the same standards across all the various parts of my life. There are definitely times when my day job takes center stage. I'm a real estate lawyer. I take great pride in that. I give great service to my clients, and sometimes that just has to be first and foremost. If I'm headed into a trial or an important hearing, or if I have something that's all-consuming, something that my clients need me to do, that's my first priority because that's my livelihood, that's my professional identity, that's something I take very seriously. But even that has limits. Sometimes I tell my colleagues, I'm not staying past 6 tonight, or I'm not working this weekend, or I've got some other stuff to do, which can include playing jazz gigs or doing other activities. I've got family, I've got my kids' activities, I've got political service, I'm active in Cuyahoga County politics, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of other stuff placing demands on my time. And all I do is basically set my boundaries. And I try to communicate those boundaries to everybody that I work with in these different spheres about, hey, I've got a gig, I have to miss this planning and zoning meeting, or hey, I've got a planning and zoning meeting, I've got to miss this gig, or hey, I've got a podcast interview, I've got to miss this lunch meeting, or whatever it might be. And so it's basically a succession of small choices. But if I'm doing it right, and mostly I think I am, if I'm doing it right, then at least I'm giving some of my attention to all of these facets of my life, my family, my work, my legal work, my musical work, my performing, and my nonprofit administration, all these other things, helping good political candidates getting elected, all the different facets. And the only way to do that is just to set boundaries and communicate them. So when, I get a CJO agenda item that I'm in charge of, I've got to do this or that, that's a project for the CJO. I am the first guy to break it up into pieces and delegate it to other people, or figure out how it can be broken up and handled so that it doesn't require me to take a week off my day job, or require me to not see my kids for 3 nights, or whatever it might be. And so I guess part of what I value about it is the ability to control my schedule that much, which I also enjoy in my legal work. I have quite a bit of control over my schedule, but it's just important to exercise that control in a way that gives every part of that, a part of my multifaceted life, some exposure to what it has to be done. So yes, sometimes I'll find myself spending an entire afternoon thinking through and responding to CJO governance emails about what's going to happen next spring, or what's going to happen in the fall. And sometimes I have to just not respond to CJO because I've got something going on with my kids, or with my day job, or something like that. So it's a lot to do, but it's part of being a well-rounded person. And as an adult, I think to be able to handle more than one thing. I don't really see many, even fantastic musicians I know still have families and hobbies. And I can't tell you how many times I've talked to musicians when I really want to know how they think about soloing over a Mixolydian scale while they're in front of a big band, and they want to talk about, hey, check out this garage door I built, or hey, check out this new cat we just got, or whatever. Like, everybody has hobbies and interests outside their main focus, and the only way to maintain it is, in my view, to just balance it all and do your best. And sometimes you'll fail. Sometimes people get disappointed in me that I didn't return that email sooner, or whatever. But in large part, I think people respect the fact that I'm trying to do good work and trying to provide worthwhile service to all these various facets of my life.
Yeah. One last thing before we go. You are also the personnel director for the CJO. If there are people out there listening who have an interest in becoming a board member in the CJO, what tips would you give as the personnel director that they should have in order to join this organization?
Sure. I'll preface it with a little bit of caveat. My role as the personnel chair is a board function, and so I actually supervise the CJO's small but mighty staff. We've got an artistic director, obviously Paul Ferguson, I mentioned already, and then an executive director and a managing director. and a personnel director, George Shernett, who books the gigs and keeps track of personnel and makes sure everybody has the right music library and such. So that job on the board is a supervising job. What I would mention to people who want to join the CJO board is that one of the things we value greatly is a connection to the music or the Cleveland scene. We obviously want people who care deeply about jazz and who understand the mission of an organization like the CJO and how it fits into the landscape of jazz music and artistic work. And also, I cherish people who have previous management experience, whether it's through a nonprofit board or whether it's in their day job or whether they've run a small business as a side hustle or something else where they're managing other people or managing a performing organization, some kind of scheduling. That kind of experience is very valuable to a board like the CJO's. And the other thing I think to mention is that the CJO board is what's known in the nonprofit industry as a working board. So a lot of our board members have outside skills that they bring to bear on the CJO's problems and challenges. So obviously I use my legal skills when I'm considering legal issues that confront the CJO. We have folks on the board with experience in everything from real property brokerage to nonprofit management, other kinds of skills, accountants and marketing and all kinds of stuff that the CJO has to do in order to operate. And so it's also helpful if candidates for the CJO board have some kind of professional skill that they'd be willing to share in their capacity as a board member. We obviously, don't expect people to work for free or do a bunch of uncompensated work, but we expect board members to at least bring their skills with them to the table and use their perspective as a professional to help the CJO with its challenges. And so folks with professional skills that are useful to the CJO that might advance the CJO's interests, even if it's just supervising other people's work in marketing or legal or property or some other topic, is also a valuable attribute.
Thank you very much. It's funny. It's great to have relationships kind of outside on the fringe of the organization and everything. But the more and more you talk to people, it all changes. It improves, it embellishes the relationship. You do a wonderful job. I appreciate everything that you do. It is good to know you. You are a busy man. I went through that busyness. That I always ask the work-life balance question because I still get accused, and I'm retired, of working too much. But the one thing is, you got to find something that you like, and if you have a passion for it, and you definitely have a passion for this organization, and you enjoy what you do, and you enjoy the people that are also on the board. So, George, I thank you. I thank you for taking time and being on the CJO podcast, Jazz in the Land. And we look forward to talking to you in greater detail about some other things. So once again, thank you very much. Thank you for the time. I give you the rest of your day back.
Thank you very much, Darrell. It's been a pleasure to talk with you, and I'll see you again soon, I hope.
Yes, sir. All right, sir. You've been listening to Jazz in the Land, the original CJO podcast. There's more after this.
This has been Jazz in the Land, the CJO podcast on behalf of the Cleveland Jazz Orchestra. Thanks so much to our board and staff and audience and supporters, and especially to the crew that makes this podcast possible, including host Darrell Scott, producers Scott Marsh and George Carr, and associate producer Ricky Exton. Thanks again for your time, and we look forward to sharing jazz with you in the future.